Welcome to Achieving Student Outcomes Through Cooperative Learning, Section 2, Part 1, Positive Interdependence, ROPE. We have covered the first 4 starter decisions. We have linked process with content. We decided on the best size groups for our starters. We determined if we do them before, during, or after a lesson. The last decision to make is called ROPE. Please turn to page 16, Cooperative Learning Continuum. Notice on this chart that starters require less rope than the 3D model. Please turn to page 35, Positive Interdependence, ROPE. Even though ROPE is the 5th decision you will make when you create starters, it will also be used in the 3D model. So, it is an important concept to understand. Next, we are going to learn about ROPE. In cooperative learning, we want students to develop positive interdependence. We do this by adding ROPE to our group instructions. ROPE stands for Resource, Obligation, Product, and Environment. Please write the ROPE acronym in your manual on page 35. You can build in interdependence by regulating a group's resources, the things they have to work with. In obligation, to others you hold groups accountable. We won't use it in starters, but we will in the 3D model. P stands for product interdependence. Groups create one product or have one goal rather than each person working on his or her own thing. The E stands for environmental interdependence, and it has to do with how you structure the environment using such strategies as creating outside challenges, changing seating arrangements, establishing group norms, and presenting bonding activities. These strategies help create an environment in which people want to work together. ROPE is what holds groups together and creates the need to work cooperatively. We will learn more about each term in ROPE when we learn about the 3D model. For now, we will learn about the power of 1, which is the rope used in starters. Please write what I have written for ROPE for starters, the power of 1, on the bottom of page 35 in your manual. When we do starters, we use appropriate amounts of rope, which we call the power of 1. We call these parts of rope the power of 1 because we create group power when we tie groups together with rope by limiting the resources available to groups, limiting the roles that group members can play, limiting the products that they make together, and limiting the space in which they work. These limitations require group members to interact with one another rather than work individually side by side. Hence, we call the results the power of 1. Through the power of 1, group work is structured so that positive interdependence is present. Please silently read pages 36 through 38, which cover the first 3 aspects of the power of 1. 1 product, 1 role, and 1 material. Highlight or underline anything that you think is important to remember. The purpose of 1 product is to assure that all group members are working toward one goal. Together, they produce 1 product, 1 definition, 1 change to something, and make 1 suggestion, etc. The power comes from making one thing together. Each member of a group doesn't create something different, nor do they each make copies of the same thing. Together, they make 1 product. With 1 role, we assign a role to 1 or more students in a group. The power of 1 is created by having only 1 person in a group responsible for a task, such as reporting, reading, timekeeping, validating, etc. To get the job done, only 1 person can read the material, and only 1 person can summarize. Therefore, the group has to depend on person A and person B to do their job so that the group can reach its goal. Not everyone in a group will necessarily have a role. But by having one or more independent roles, the group members are required to work more closely with one another in order to accomplish their common goal. You can create your own names for the roles in your classroom. Some students have an auditory discrimination problem when they hear the terms recorder and reporter. You might call them writer and reporter to distinguish between the two. It will be important for you to teach your students about the type of behavior that you expect when they are assigned a role. They need to understand what it will look like and sound like when they are each doing their assigned job. You cannot expect them to know what to do unless you go over your expectations with them. You don't necessarily have to tell them how to behave. You can elicit ideas from the class about how the person in this role might act. You can let the ideas come from the students. With one material, the resources available to the group are limited so that members are forced to share. When there is one piece of paper on which to draw a picture with one colored marker, the group must work together. If there is one pair of scissors, the group must share. We modeled one material in this class when one person had a sheet of graphic organizers. You had to work together filling it out in order to prepare for the pop quiz. If you each had a copy of the sheet, there would have been a temptation to fill it out on your own. In cooperative starters, you do not have to assign every one of the power of one elements every time. For example, you might limit the product to one and not assign roles or materials. Or you might assign roles and limit the product and allow multiples of materials. Or you might limit the materials and the product, yet assign no roles. Because starters are short, you may decide to use only one or two elements of the power of one, although you can use all four if you wish. We are just beginning to learn about rope. Stronger, more elaborate rope will be applied when we get to the 3D model. Until then, we will refer to rope when we apply it to starters as the power of one. Please read the directions on page 39 for the power of one activity. Work individually and write two different cooperative starters that each feature two of these three ways to harness the power of one. In other words, each starter doesn't need to incorporate all three types. You may assign roles for the starter, require one product, or limit the materials. For one of the cooperative starters, you may use one of the cooperative starters you created previously on pages 18 through 21, or one from your cooperative starters combining process and content sheet. For the second cooperative starter, you will create a new one. Please post your cooperative starter to Canvas Modules Section 2 Part 1, the Power of One Activity discussion area. Tell your core group members how you built in the power of one and why you picked the ones you did. Ask them if they have any suggestions for your cooperative starters. Is there material in your cooperative starter that you could limit? What roles would you assign? Who has an example of the power of one product? You don't need to share your starter, we just want to know your product. It could be one mind map, a sketch for poster. It could also be a printout. Who used the power of one material? And what material did you limit? It could be a ball, paper, a set of shapes, a copy of a story. Who used the power of one role? And what roles did you assign? It could be one illustrator, one permission giver, or one reporter. Please read the material on page 40, The Power of One Space, silently to yourself. It is important in cooperative learning that you, the teacher, set up the space in which groups work so that groups look like groups, not like individuals working in the same area. The power of one space doesn't happen by accident or by luck or magic. It happens when teachers realize its importance and purposely structure it in. You have to become a stickler about it if you want it to work for you. You need to get your students away from tables, as we have done in this class. Tables in particular create distance. They create physical distance, which results in more noise and chaos because students have to raise their voices to hear each other. Students lie on them or stack them that get in the way. They may also create emotional distance. The use of tables create an interaction pattern that is different than the pattern created when tables are not used. Sometimes, however, you need tables for what you want students to do, but be aware when you use them and use them sparingly. Please read The Power of One Space Practice. The directions are on the bottom of page 40. Work individually and pick any two of your previously written cooperative starters from pages 18 through 21 from your cooperative starters combining process and content sheet, or from page 39, and explain how you would structure the power of one space. Write your cooperative starters on page 41. Under the heading Starter, you don't have to write the whole starter out. You can refer to it by writing a descriptive statement. The starter that creates a mind map, or the starter on classroom rules. Under the heading Directions for the Power of One Space, write what you would tell students to do in order to create the power of one space. How would you create a physical arrangement conducive to groups working closely together in your classroom? How would you tell students to arrange themselves in your environment to create the power of one space? Would you have them meet standing up? Would you have them sit together on the floor? Would you have them sit in a circle? Write the directions in the way you would actually speak to your students. Please go to Canvas, Module, Section 2, Part 1, The Power of One Space, Practice Discussion Area to share your directions. To review, what we are talking about is oneness, the community of us, the sense of we. Our unity doesn't just happen. Oneness is created by teachers who effectively use the power of one. You get one material and role to create one product to become one space. This concludes Section 2, Part 1, Positive Interdependence, Rope. Please continue to Module Section 2, Part 1, Cooperative Starters, Course Portfolio.